So it appears we are indeed online. Let's go. Let's do this.
The radical,
Oh, it appears
fundamental
we are
principles
indeed.
of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brooks Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brooks Show on this Sunday, probably the Sunday before last. We're broadcasting from this house in California. We're getting close to me moving out. All right, today we've got our monthly Q&A, and we have, let's see, we've got a full house today. I think we've got quite a few of our supporters here online with us. So I think everybody knows how this works. I am basically going to go around, let everybody have an opportunity to ask a question, maybe do some super chat, and then we'll see how many rounds we can get through. Or somebody noticed I'm wearing a t-shirt. Sorry, I'm in the middle of packing and trashing and stuff like that. So no collared shirt today. All right, let's get started. David.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you hear you perfectly.
All right, so my question's about debates. I think you're an excellent debater and you really seem to enjoy doing it. And I know your goal is to influence the audience, not the person you're debating. However, I am curious of a couple of things. One, have you ever had a debate with the other debater go beyond the debate? In other words, continue to argue the points down the road after the debate, or maybe even through email or phone conversations? That's my first question. Is it ever kind of continued?
Yeah.
And my second question is, well, you want to answer that one first?
Well, I think the answer is no.
No, never has.
I can't think of it. I'm trying to think. I can't think of a time where the debate continued afterwards. I've done dozens, if not hundreds, of debates. Yeah, if I think of something, I'll let you know, but nothing right now.
Just curious.
Oh, well, yeah. Jerry's asking if not even with Leonard, because I did that debate with Leonard over immigration. No, not even with Leonard, partially because his attitude, I think, is, all right, I'm done with that, right? I'm retired. I don't want to have to do this. So, so no, I don't think we continued that discussion, and I don't think I changed his mind, and I know he didn't change mine. So,
okay. Well, my second question is: have you ever had a debater tell you confidentially, "Hey, Yaron, I know you're right on this, but I've got to still argue this other side because of this, or this"?
Again, I don't think so. No, I mean, there's certainly been debates where they've said, "Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with you," and they've said it on stage while we're debating. Yeah, I agree with you, Ron, but that I get a lot of debates go, yeah, everything you said is true, but, and of course the but completely contradicts everything I just said. So undermines the fact that they said they agreed with me. So, sometimes a debate, somebody else on the other side responds emotionally to what I've said positively, but doesn't really get it, doesn't really understand it. But no, unfortunately, neither of those has happened.
Okay, just curious. Always wondered.
Sure. All right, Jennifer. You're still muted.
Okay. Do you think sometimes, I've heard people will say that being in the middle of the road is good. They'll see it as being good as opposed to being extreme. And do you think maybe sometimes what a person is doing is picking out the good and the bad from different ideas that actually are tied together with a principle, and it's like a third option, a third alternative, but they don't really see that that's what they're doing?
Yeah, I don't. I mean, then I wouldn't use middle of the road on them. I'd say, they've got a different perspective or different. I think the middle of the road is non-committal to anything, right? It's the idea of not committal to anything. But certainly people can be, I don't like that, and I don't like that. I kind of like something else, or I like some blend of the two, or I like a mixture, or something like that. You know, I don't like vodka, I don't like orange juice, but mix them together. They're great. I don't know where that example came from for somebody who doesn't drink either vodka or orange juice, or the mixture. So yeah, but I wouldn't call that middle of the road. I would call that another option.
Yeah, it seems like people use that term a lot as if it's somehow a good thing, because then you're not extreme.
Well, yes,
You
people
know?
definitely don't want to be perceived as principled or extreme. They don't want to be perceived as having too strong of a view of everything. I mean, it goes back to the altruism. It goes back to the lack of self-esteem. Altruism teaches us not to be overly confident in our own views and our own opinions, not to hold things in any kind of principled way. Who are you to know? My mother often told me. I mean, so there's a big push not to be too certain, too extreme, too confident, too principled. And people view, therefore, being in the middle of the road as being a good thing.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I was sitting on the fence is another, sitting on the fence.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, is another one. There's a song there's an Israeli song all about sitting on the fence with one leg here and one leg there, and how ridiculous that is, and how, pick a side, and it's a good song. It's a good song. All right, Jerry.
So I've not joined one of these before, so I'm just here out of curiosity. So no particular question, but I'm hoping to hear at some point, Yaron, more about your Innovators project that you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, it's too soon, but I'm hoping early next year I'll have more to say about it. It is a project that's going to bridge my investment side with the more intellectual side. So it's a project that will focus on creating a certain view of innovation, technology, growth, economic growth, and so on, and then offer an investment product that is associated with it. Become what they call become thought leaders around this issue, and then say, and you can invest in this. So make it very applicable, very current, very looking at what's happening right now, what's happening in particularly in technology, biotech, anything where there's real innovation going on. Look at all those fields kind of from a different perspective, hopefully from a fresh new perspective.
Good. Well, I look forward to that, and let us know if we can help.
Good. Thank you. Thank you. Darius.
Hi, Yaron.
Hey.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
The second-hander in me is happy to see you're also wearing a white t-shirt.
Mine has reason on. Yours has Atlas Shrugged. Mine says reason.
Cool.
I don't know where I got it, but I have it.
Well, I haven't had a chance to really think about a lot of questions. I do want to just do an acknowledgement and thank you for something I've never thanked you for. Thank you for recommending the show, Mr. Sunshine.
Oh.
Yeah, after 2 failed attempts getting through that first episode, I finally got through it on the 3rd try. And
worth it?
Yeah, it's just a wonderful series, wonderful show. I mean, it's so refreshing to have a positive theme like that, and the characters were incredible. I mean, if you don't fall in love with Lady Asen, you just don't have a pulse. That's.
I'm with you. Jerry thought it was too violent, so she gave up. Yeah, when I watched it the second time, knowing that Jerry, stopped watching it because of the violence, I paid attention more, and yeah, there are scenes that are very violent, particularly.
That cutting off the hand did it for me. That just
doesn't happen that frequently.
But the scenery, it was beautiful, but I just could not tolerate that much.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it, Darius, and I'm getting a lot of good feedback. So there are a lot of people who did enjoy it. So it's nice. It's nice to see people enjoying good art. All right, Jonathan.
Thanks, Yaron. And two quick comments and then a question. First of all, you mentioned your debate with Leonard, with Dr. Peikoff about immigration. And, you know, I remember, I think when you did that, you, I believe, made it pretty clear what so many people missed was that I think part of why you did it was to demonstrate that you can disagree about the application of a philosophy, but not only agree about the principles of a philosophy, but still remain good friends afterwards, and not kind of separate into some tribal warfare. And I, you know, you guys did that maybe in 2015, or I mean, it was certainly before even Trump kind of came around. So you were very prophetic, if you will, in demonstrating that you can disagree about the application of objectivism and still remain friends and remain objectivists, if you will.
It's too bad people didn't take that to heart, but yes.
And also quickly, a compliment on your vaccine show. Oh. You know, you made the point that who on the right, even the so-called right, the so-called defenders of capitalism, are saying anything like what you are really putting out there in terms of you know, developing a real free market in vaccines and questioning this whole altruistic premise behind the whole kit and caboodle. So that reminds me of just how radical what you're doing is, and gives me a lot of fuel to keep supporting you and keep supporting the movement writ large.
Thank you. Thank you.
Here's my question, though, and it actually kind of is a bit about the movement and about the kind of evangelicalism of it, if you will. You know, for many years around objectivism, I've always heard people try to kind of throw out these gotcha questions, and you got one of them yesterday. It was a gotcha question of something effective like, well, Yaron isn't a perfect objectivist, and here's why. You remember that? Yeah. And you know, obviously with Miss Rand was always said, oh, well, you know, she took Social Security, so she's not. And my question is the point of that rebuke or supposed rebuke to kind of demonstrate that, oh, no one's perfect. See, you don't believe in anything, no one's perfect, or is it just kind of a way to throw an ad hominem attack and avoid addressing the issues that you or Miss Rand or anyone else are asking? So what's the point of that kind of gotcha attack?
I think it depends on who it is, but it's both. Certainly sometimes it's just a way to brush aside an argument with an ad hominem attack and not, well, that person, I mean, why even talk about them? But I think it's very much, there's a psychology there of, if I believed somebody was that good, then what would that say about me, right? Not being that good, right? So it's important for me to believe there's nobody perfect, or there's nobody striving for perfection, or perfection is impossible, because I don't. So I don't want to think that I'm wasting my time when it's possible, when, you know, when I could be doing it. So I definitely think there is that self-esteem issue about, you know, not living up to your own standards, therefore putting other people, trying to find flaws in other people, making an effort to find flaws in other people. And that I think that's definitely, you see that all the time. And it's sad, because it's sad for the person doing it, right?
I mean, I'll just say, I mean, for me, one of the things that has always attracted me to objectivism is that it doesn't require omniscience. You know, you are not asked to be God. And I know for me, I'll say, you know, maybe this is too much information, but, you know, sometimes I do evade, sometimes I do. I am emotional maybe, but it's that philosophy that helps me kind of, if you will, get back on the wagon and live rationally and succeed in life. So
absolutely, you know, absolutely. It's about what you do about it, and it's about having the standard of perfection, even if you don't always meet it. That's not, but you don't relish the fact that you don't meet it. You don't. That's not the big deal, right?
Yeah.
And that's what these other people are doing. They're making the, oh, you're just human, right? No, the human part is the striving for perfection. And sometimes I screw up, right? You know, and that's inhumane in a sense, right? Because to be human is to be rational, and to the extent that I'm not rational, I'm not being human. But they want it the other way around because of their own psychological issues, right? And it's sad. It's sad that that's used to undermine objectivism. It's sad for those people where it's undermining their own self-esteem. and their own ability.
Well, and it just seems too, there's a religious element too, because omniscience is the standard.
Yes,
It's all about,
I've talked about Garden of Eden, right? And that's a
Right.
standard, right? The Garden of Eden, where everything just comes to you. So if you have to work at something, oh, that sucks, because I have to actually do something to get my stuff. The Garden of Eden is my model. And I think that yeah, I mean, Christianity has all these, I mean, Jordan Peterson talks about this in a different sense, but Christianity has implanted in us all these models of what life is like. And one of those models is original sin. None of us is perfect. You cannot, and that just reinforces that religious element. Or the ideal God is omniscient and omnipotent. So if you're not God, therefore you can, if you're not omniscient or omnipotent, then you can't be perfect, because God is perfection. So all of these ideas, Christianity has created these, it's like what Rand talks about in art, right? You want to be like Howard Roark. Well, that's now a model, right? Well, religion does exactly the same thing. I mean, the Bible, it presents you with these models that now shape the way you think. And they have these condensations. You don't have to remember every biblical verse. You just have to remember a couple of stories, and they guide you in the right direction. There's a sense in which objectivism, or any objectivism, is like that, because so much of the philosophy was developed in the service of aesthetics, the service of a novel. So we have stories that serve a similar model. What is Joe Peterson calls it archetypes or something like that, but there's something real there that he's talking about. And Christianity is everywhere, and whether they're Christians or not doesn't matter. They could be Jews, they could be atheists. There's still, Christianity has this deep impact, because it's been around the culture for 2,000 years as a dominant force, and it's never really been challenged, except for Ayn Rand. All right, let's see who's next. We've got Daniel.
Thanks, Ron. When do the handouts stop? I mean, right now, I'm sure some people think when the vaccine is widely distributed, it'll go away, but at the same time, we're kind of implementing universal basic income by monthly vote. And some of those people are going to argue, well, we don't really see the negative impact on the economy by handing this money out. And it's certainly popular with certain people. So, morally, who's opposed to just keep doing it?
Nobody's morally opposed to it. Nobody. The Republicans might quibble about who gets it, right? I mean, I saw Josh Hawley the other day on television, and he was making a big deal about we need to get money into the hands of working people, like 3,000 times he said working people. So he doesn't want it to give it to non-working people. So he doesn't want to increase unemployment benefits, but he wants to give it to, and it's just a matter of who he wants to give it to. But the money, that's obvious that you have to give it. The Republicans don't want to give it to the states. They'd rather give it to business, right? Because the states and localities who need the money are predominantly Democratic, and they don't want to bail out the state governments that are being irresponsible, but they're fine with bailing out businesses that are being irresponsible. And you could go on and on. So I don't know. I think it'll stop because there's certain people, not many, but certain people, both in the Biden administration and in Congress, who do know that the deficit and debt is a problem. So as much as I think Janet Yellen is not a great economist, she is traditional enough and to know at some level that debt is not good. So she will be a voice in administration saying, whoa, we just can't print up $10 trillion tomorrow and do all these things. I also think that what happens is that once you start doing this, which we're seeing right now, everybody's going to come with their hand up. And the Democrats are going to have to prioritize. And I think that the priority is going to be, rather than giving people checks, the priority is going to be things like to try to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour, which is the same, but it's a different redistribution, different mechanism. And then big spending stuff will be things like green mini Green New Deal. It won't be the full-blown one, but it'll be a mini version. Infrastructure, which of course Republicans support, and I'm surprised Trump never really pushed because he was very supportive of. And healthcare. Those will be the things that they really push because that's what they promised. But we'll see. You know, if the recession continues, let's say because of all this money printing, there's stagflation, which is not out of the question at all. Then there's a good chance that what are they going to do? Let people not have unemployment insurance? I mean, they've got into the habit of continuously. They did it in 08, 09. So it could continue. So as long as there are emergencies, they will write checks, and then the rest of the spending they'll spend kind of when there's regular times, they'll just spend on regular, so-called regular things. But no, the government now is globally, really. I don't know that there's any place on earth where this is not the approach. The government is now, its job is to bail us out whenever there's a financial crisis. It never used to be. It used to be, oh, we need to bail out these people. Oh, but we really hate bailing them out, but we'll do it anyway. And then if the financial crisis came, and you remember Paulson asked for $700 billion to do whatever he wanted with. And then Congress said no, and he said, okay, we'll do TOP. But they didn't do TOP, they did something else because trouble asset repurchase program never happened, right? They bought, basically gave loans to the banks. And then the Obama stimulus, and now it's just accepted that as part of the government's role is to bail us out. And that had been somewhat defeated, you know, at least in the 70s and 80s, you didn't see government just writing checks. This is the Great Depression, and now are the eras in which this is the attitude, and it's only going to get worse before it gets better. And you're right. Not only is there's no moral opposition, I can understand there not being a moral opposition, right? There's no economic opposition. Nobody. I mean, Jonathan's on Fox a lot. I mean, how often on Fox they have an economist who says, no, this is bad. This is not good. This is bad economics. You did.
Yeah, I'll quickly just say, I mean, the same commentators who all through the Obama years said this was just a bubble that was due to pop. As soon as President Trump came to power, said, oh, this is due to President Trump's wonderful management of the economy. And there was no more talk of any problem spending or deficit spending of the Fed or anything else.
No, it's so there's nothing. I mean, I said this about the vaccines, you know, it wasn't my idea, it was John Cochrane. But John Cochrane makes the point in his piece, why aren't the free market economists talking about this stuff? And you could include, now he's got a piece, his second piece was on debt, because I took that from John as well. And nobody else other than John Cochrane that I know of is making a big deal right now out of debt, out of the fact that one day we'll have, including the libertarian economists. I just don't see them out there doing the work to get the word out there. And it's very disheartening. They've been completely silenced. And I think the reason is ethics, morality. They can't just say, you know, the government shouldn't do anything, can't do anything, or whatever. They don't have the moral courage to say that.
And that's been their opinion of Japan for a long time. It's like, well, the Japanese government shouldn't do that, but they kind of have to.
Yes. What option is there? You know, freedom? Freedom?
That's crazy. What are you talking
about? Yeah. Since when has that worked?
Yeah.
All right, Zach. Oh, I can't hear you. You're unmuted, but I can't hear you. Some setting. All right, let me move on to Naveen while you try to figure out the setting. Hey, Naveen.
Hey, Yaron, can you hear me?
Yes, hear you perfectly.
Okay, great. Question about Elon Musk. He's been in the news quite a bit lately.
Yeah.
And you've talked before about your mixed feelings about Elon Musk. In that, on the one hand, he's this audacious, bold innovator that's pushing the limits of just technology in general. But on the other hand, he's taking a lot of money from the government, right? So And I've asked this question before, but I think I didn't put it correctly. So previously you mentioned that when individuals take money from the government, you mentioned that that's fine because ultimately it's your own money, right? Because government is taking your money in taxes.
Well,
So how's that different from Elon Musk saying government is preventing me from making all this money because of regulations or taxes or whatever, so I'm taking this money back? How can he not legitimize that?
if he actually said that, then I would say it's okay for him to take the money, right? So when I said it's okay for individuals to take the money, it's okay for individuals to take the money if they're anti-taking the money and they're publicly anti-taking the money, and they make an issue out of not taking them, that the money shouldn't be distributed. They're not taking the money, that the money shouldn't be distributed. So the people who are anti-government doing this stuff, it's okay for them to take the money. If Elon Musk came out and said, look, I don't think government should subsidize solar. I don't think government should subsidize electric cars. I don't think it's any of the government's, I want this to be a competitive market. But look, they're handing out the money. I don't think they should, but they're handing out the money. I'm going to take it. It's my money partially, and partially my competitors are going to get it if I don't get it, right? Then I'd say, okay. But that's not what he's saying. He actually, as far as I can tell, he lobbies, he encourages the government to give him more money and to get more involved in climate change and in electric cars, right? So that's what upsets me. On the other hand, I have to say that since COVID, my respect for him has gone way up, and I'm willing to ignore some of the bad because he's left California. He stood up to local government and didn't shut his plant down. He's been very vocal about the best thing government can do if it wants economic growth is leave us alone. So he's been far more outspoken in a positive way. He hasn't in a long time talked about the fact that the robots are going to kill us all, right? He used to do that. He used to have this whole AI. The government needs to regulate AI because AI is dangerous and you need to be careful. So he is so frustrating because he's obviously off the charts intelligent and off the charts admirable in his entrepreneurship. That is, he's willing to take an idea, just run with it, and he comes up with these. Like the tunneling company, right? Who would have thought of a tunneling company? But he's got this amazing technology to build these tunnels really, really fast. I don't think the environmentalists will let him, but imagine, because there might be some worms under there, or who knows what kind of species under there. But what a mind this guy has, and he thinks out of the box, and he's constantly thinking and changing and innovating, and the ambition of going to Mars, and having that ambition 20 years ago, and setting up a company when it was like, yeah, you got to be kidding. And then achieving everything that's achieved and getting to the point where we are today where, yeah, I think SpaceX is going to go to Mars. If the government doesn't stop them, I think they're going to go to Mars. What's going to stop him, right? He's got the capital. He's raised the capital. They've shown that they can do the technology. They've got a business model that produces revenue right now. They will go to Mars. This is cool, right? So I become a big fan of his. And at the same time, I want to strangle him on the global, on the global warming stuff and on the electric car stuff and on the other stuff. And even Tesla, it's a good car. It's as Alex Epstein calls it, it's a coal car, which is fine, running on coal. But it's a if you sit in it and you friends who have it and drive it, it's a cool car to drive. Yep.
Has Alex done any kind of analysis or shown any numbers as to how much Tesla is polluting, quote unquote, the environment compared to a regular car? Because it uses coal, right?
I don't know, but the numbers are going to be amazing because you've got to use, given that we're not using nuclear, you have to use carbon fuels to fuel it, right? And second, and coal is still a major source of energy for electricity. And second, people have looked at the batteries, and batteries are unbelievably polluting or whatever, and from a carbon perspective, carbon whatever, inefficient or whatever they call it. So there's no, I don't know why Musk does what he does. I wouldn't be surprised if Musk thought it would be cool. It would be really cool to build an electric car. One way to do it is I can manipulate the government into giving me a lot of money to fund this and help me raise the capital. I wouldn't be shocked if he actually thought that and went about and did it just like he does. He just does it and it works, right? So I'm really, really mixed about him, but when I listen to him, half of what he said is amazing and admirable, and then it's cognitive mishmash. He's got his mind is like goes all over the place, and it
Totally
doesn't mean anything. Doesn't mean anything, and I don't understand a mind like that. I have no idea how it works, but the part that is rational is amazing. He's one of the best minds in the world today.
Thank you.
Matthew, and then we'll go back to Zach if he's fixed the audio. Matthew.
Hi, greetings from Wisconsin, Yaron.
Hey, got snow already, huh?
Say it again?
Got snow already?
Not much. It's actually pretty warm here right now for the season. I do want to take an opportunity to, encourage listeners and everybody to, in addition to supporting yourself, to support the Ayn Rand Institute. And one simple and fun way that I found to do that is through Amazon Smile. So every time you make a purchase, Amazon will kick a few percentage points over towards the Institute. So
I do that. I just got my report from Amazon on how many dollars, the Ayn Rand Institute has received from the Amazon Smile program. And they're non-trivial amounts.
Yep. So yeah, moving on. I want to talk about, I guess music versus lyrics, right? So you get a lot of questions about musicians and songs.
Yeah.
I know you said you're a fan of Pink Floyd. And I guess when you're having those discussions, are you separating the music from the lyrics? Are you considering both? Does the music take away from the message? Does it add to the message? How are you analyzing that?
So the ideal, right? The ideal song, the ideal, any kind of vocal musical piece, the lyrics and the music would be completely integrated. They would reinforce one another. If the words are evoking an emotion, the music should evoke a similar emotion, right? And that's great music. When you can do both of that, when you can have the words and the music integrated, no matter what the theme, but integrated, then that is, I think, an ideal situation. And that happens. I think Pink Floyd does. I mean, the music is usually pretty depressing and dark, and the lyrics are pretty depressing and dark, right? And it's integrated, and it's, in that sense, it's good, right? It's good aesthetically because it's integrated, right? It might not have the right sense of life. It might be presenting values that you don't like, but you have to evaluate it aesthetically, not based on our values, but based on the aesthetic characteristics of the music and the lyrics and the integration between the two. Right? I find I respond much more to music than to lyrics, right? So I, for example, I listen to a lot of opera. I like knowing what the lyrics are, but I can listen to opera without knowing what the hell she's talking about, right? And I can get, because the music is so emotion evoking, I hope that the lyrics are consistent with that when she's singing, because the emotions are so strong. I listen to I really like bossa nova, which is a Brazilian form of jazz, and so the singing is in Portuguese. I have no idea what they're saying, right? But I find that the music and the emotion that you can express with a voice, when that's another level of integration, right? It's how you use your voice, the lyrics, the music, all of that. I'm very attracted to that. But on the other hand, when I listen to songs from my teen years, particularly in Hebrew, the fact that I understand the words is a value. So, I think it's I think you can enjoy different things in different songs. And again, the ideal is when everything is integrated. I just heard the singer Una Sachs, right? She's a singer 20s, 30s, 40s, right? Long time ago, 100 years, almost 100 years ago. And she had the most stunning voice I've ever heard. She could do stuff at the top range that I've never heard any singer, opera, non-opera do, right? And it was just enjoyable just listening to her voice. The music was fun. Didn't understand a word she said. She sang in German. But the stuff she was doing with her voice was stunning, just stunning. So I can enjoy different things in different compositions. I don't particularly like Bob Dylan's voice, but I think his voice matches his lyrics and his music quite well. I wouldn't want Bob Dylan singing bossa nova, if you know bossa nova, is a smooth jazz, right? But for his gritty poetry and the kind of music that comes with it, I think his voice is perfectly integrated, and it's a blend. So I don't know if I'm answering your question. I'm rambling on about my views on this stuff.
Yeah, I think you're answering the question pretty well. I thought, for me, I wanted it cleared up a little bit. That did seem to me like you kind of focus more on the music than the lyrics, and I figure a lot of the questions you get,
yep.
The questioner isn't concerned about the music. They're impressed with the lyrics of Rush more so than the music, perhaps.
Maybe, I don't know. And again, I've never really responded to Rush, so I won't comment. But I also look, take Pink Floyd. For those of you who know Pink Floyd, take "Wish You Were Here," right? I mean, or "Shine On Crazy Diamond," either one of those, that album. The words can be interpreted in a way that I understand, right? I wish you were here. The music is very wishy, right? It's like, what's the term I'm looking for? But it expresses that I miss you, right? It really does express that longing. That's the word, longing, right? That "Wish You Were Here" is reflecting. And it's got this sad, longing, wistful kind of thing to it. And I think the music and the lyrics are well integrated. And this is the thing, the lyrics, I don't respond to literature generally, to written word generally, because it's right. I don't respond to literature because it's right? I respond to it because it's beautiful, because it's well communicated, because it projects some intense value. It doesn't even have to be my value. So take, for example, Victor Hugo. You read Victor Hugo, and like Les Miserables has a whole thing about socialism and about the plight of the poor. And 93, which is my favorite, they're struggling over things that I don't really care that much about. I mean, both the heroes are my villains, right? They're both wrong. But abstract away from that, and it is the heroism, it is the valuing, not the particular values, that I respond to. So I worry about objectivist art, so-called objectivist art. There is no such thing as objectivist art. Art that is so focused on getting the lyrics to be consistent with objectivism that everything else is forgotten. But the lyrics have to be good. That doesn't mean objectivist, just means good. Then if you're an objectivist and you want them to be consistent with your values, then they need to project those values. And then you have to write great music on top of that. All of that is super, super difficult, right? And I respond, different people respond to different things. I respond to the music because the music is more direct. There's no literature. There's a thought process involved. You're thinking about things. Music is just respond to. And I find that very easy and in a sense appealing, because I don't have to, okay, does this make sense? Is this true? I just think, is this beautiful, isn't it? That's it, right? There's no cognition involved, which is nice. For art is supposed to appeal to your emotion, and music goes directly to your emotion. And the lyrics, in a sense, get in the way, because now I'm thinking, well, does Bob Dylan really mean that? What does he mean by that? What is going to, and then I've lost the song because I'm trying to analyze his lyrics. Now, when you kind of understand, again, Bob Dylan, his lyrics are not objectivist, right? But his lyrics make sense in the context of the music. And they again, reflect certain emotions that I think are universal. That's what makes him successful. The fact that the emotions are universal emotions, even if the specifics of the lyrics are not something I like. Right? How does it feel to be on your own? I mean, when I was a teenager and an objectivist teenager, to be like a Rolling Stone, I mean, that got me, right? Even though you would say from an objectivist perspective, oh, that's so depressing, it's so down. Yeah, but I was down and depressed. I was alone as a teenager, hard getting girls, and nobody agreed with me. And I felt like I was the only human being on the planet. And Bob Dylan, with that song, got to me, right? In a way that other forms of art don't, because it's so visceral. Music is so visceral. Anyway.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the attention here.
Sure, my pleasure, Matthew. Good question. All right, Zach, audio fixed?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, sorry about that.
No problem.
So I think you commented on one of your episodes that you have a goal of living to 150, I think I heard. And I'm just curious if you could provide some details on how you plan on achieving that, or how serious you were.
Oh my God, a goal is that which one acts to gain or keep. Maybe I should say it's a fantasy of living to 150. I mean, I would like to live as long as I can if I'm in good health. I mean, certainly when I see people, and as I get older, I see more and more of these people because they're closer to me, who get to a certain age and they're losing either their physical ability to maneuver or their mental capacity to really stay focused and stay attuned to the world. Then I realize how, I mean, it really is, getting old really, really, really does suck. It really does. I mean, Leonard Peikoff has been telling me this for 20 something years, and I never believed him until recently, and it does. So if I'm gonna live to be 150, I want to live well, right? I want to live in good shape. So what I do, I try to eat well. Problem with that is I still can't figure out what that means, right? Every 2 years, there's a new theory about what eating well means and what it entails, and I don't know. So I've tried to do my best, but I have a feeling I probably got it all screwed up, so it's not going to work. I don't know. I exercise. I think that's pretty ubiquitous. That's pretty straightforward. Move, right? Stand, don't sit. That's why I have a standing desk. It's things that are just straightforward. I've got a bad back, so take care of that. Work on your core, do things like that. And I'm probably not as good about that as I should be. I probably should be exercising even more. And then, one of the things I want to do, again, but I'm worried about the availability of knowledge, is to engage with doctors who could really guide you to that. Catch disease early, for example. If you can catch cancer early, right? Recovery rate from cancer caught very early are very high, even really bad cancers. So one example I give that I'm doing right now, that I'm actually just doing this year for the first time, but if it works, I plan to do it every year, is I'm going to get a full body MRI. Right? I've done full body CAT scans, but the problem with full body CAT scans is it's radiation. And you don't want to do that every year. Although it's not a lot of radiation, still it's radiation. So MRIs are painless, other than you have to sit in this thing that makes a lot of noise. And if you're claustrophobic, it's bad for you. But it's painless, no radiation, no damage. And they really take slices, and they start with the brain. They do a half an hour just on the brain. They slice it everywhere, and they get a 3-dimensional imaging of the brain. So if there's any issues, they can see them. And the same then they do with the body, and then they do the circulatory system. So I'm doing that. I'm doing a genomic, what do you call it? I think they do 90-something% of your genome, so that they can tell you based on the science, what you're susceptible to. So I know, for example, I did it with 23andMe, and they told me I was susceptible to type 2 diabetes. So I almost never, I eat very little sugar, very, very little sugar. Partially because of that, partially because I think it makes sense. And then just get an annual checkup and watch your blood counts and check up on your hormones. Hormones are something we don't usually think about and doctors don't really look at hormones, but hormones are really crucial to how you feel and how you do in life. Whether it's women have this set of hormones, and it's, you know, how they feel and how they, the energy level, the ability to focus, a lot of that is guided by hormones. So you want to make sure as you age, testosterone in men declines, human growth hormone declines. And you want to keep track of that. If it declines too much, you might want to supplement, but then you have to be careful. Anyway, it's a mess. But you know, so I'm trying to find the knowledge that is available out there about these things. Somebody asked, take vitamin D. Yes, I've been taking vitamin D since Robbie Segler, who sometimes appears here on this, bet me. He used to run tanning salons, so he was big into vitamin D, and he bet me that I was vitamin D deficient. And I said, nah, why would I be vitamin D deficient? I'm fine. And I went and got tested, and I was way vitamin D deficient. So since then, I've been taking vitamin D supplements, even though I live in sunny climates. I recommend, you know, I shouldn't recommend stuff like this, but I would encourage people to to talk to a doctor about getting more vitamin D, because I think most people, particularly if you have dark skin, but even if you have light skin, are vitamin D deficient.
Yeah, I mean, I was really wondering if your goal was based on some of the, you know, the longevity research that seems to be, you know, the breakthroughs that seem to be around the corner. You know, you read about it almost every day now.
It's not because the breakthroughs are around the corner, and they've been around the corner for at least 20 years that I've been following it. And you talk to 2 or 3 different longevity specialists, and they give you different advice. And I was on a board of a longevity company. I just am not yet confident enough in any of the science that I've seen to say, okay, I'm going to commit to that and really get engaged with that. So right now, I'm doing kind of the basics. I'm not doing anything beyond that, but I'm keeping an eye on it. And if there's a breakthrough, I'll be, you know, I'll jump on it. But I just don't. I've got some friends who spend a lot of time on this. I should probably ask them, but in the past, when I've asked, it was basically, we're trying this, we're trying that. We're not sure what works, but we're trying a bunch of different things. And I'd like a little bit more knowledge than before I jumped in. All right. Just to remind everybody online, you can please like the show. There's over 100 people watching, 54 likes. We should get that up over 100. That'd be great. Helps the algorithm. You can use the super chat to ask questions. The higher the dollar amount in the super chat, the quicker I will answer the questions. So let me take just a few here. I have not done the rant on Paul Tudor Jones. Sorry, but I will. I've got it marked to address, an issue to be addressed on a future show. Have you kept any aspect of your Jewish culture or heritage, or has objectivism caused you to leave it behind completely? It depends what you mean about Jewish culture. There's certain things about Jewish culture you can't just abandon. It's just part of you, right? So you respond to certain jokes in a particular way. You respond to, you know, portray, you know, like there's just certain things that you grow up with and are just part of you, and it's hard, you know, and hard and not worth shaking, right? It's not worth getting rid of. You know, there's nothing Jewish beyond that I know of. That, you know, yeah, I mean, there's nothing. I don't celebrate the holidays. I don't know when they are. People, usually non-Jews, have to remind me when the Jewish holidays are, so I can remember to call my parents or something and say something. So I don't remember any of that. I don't have anything Jewish in my home that you would walk, other than, you know, a painting of Judith who's just cut off the head of, you know, but it's not because it's Jewish, it's because it's Judith. She's amazing. And if you see I think I showed in one of my shows, the painting. I mean, it's an amazing painting. So no, I mean, I think my Jewishness has been, I mean, it wasn't that strong to begin with, and because I was an atheist at a very young age, although I was a very collectivistic in the early days. But Jewish, you know, it never really stuck, and it's really all gone. Right? I mean, you might hear me sighing in a particular way or complaining a lot about particular things. That's kind of in the DNA somehow, right? There's just certain something that you pick up from the other Jews around you that is hard to let go of. But other than that, I mean, you can ask people to know me if there's anything particularly Jewish. All right, let's see. Eric from Norway. I'm on my way home from the concert hall. You have concerts in Norway? Oh my God, they have concerts in Norway. There are no concerts in California. I mean, you can barely leave your home in California. You know, I'm exaggerating, but there are no concerts anywhere in the US, I don't think. I'm on my way home from the concert hall where we heard Oliver Messiaen, La Nativité de, I can't pronounce it. Have you heard it? Would you comment? I'm left thinking that if that's the Catholic sense of life, I get why they need to prohibit suicide. That's great. No, I don't think I know that one, but I certainly know Catholic music because I as part of my exploration into classical music, I've heard many requiems, masses by some of the great composers. And yeah, I mean, the sense of life is, I mean, it's beautiful music first. I mean, some of the best music ever written are requiems for the dead, right? Berlioz has an amazing one. Verdi has an amazing one. What's the third one? Brahms has an amazing one. There's another one that's really, Mozart's Requiem, of course, from Amadeus. I mean, amazing pieces of music. But yeah, I mean, it's either the sense of life coming across is groveling and then God, thrashing you with a bolt of lightning. And I love the parts of God thrashing you with a bolt of lightning. Those are exciting and fun, right? It gets loud and it gets intense but that's when, the world is coming to an end, right? So it's definitely, that is the Catholic sense of life. That is what Catholicism at the end of the day is about. It's about you're a sinner, you're nothing, you're a nobody, and God is all powerful, all knowing, and spend your time on your knees asking for forgiveness. That's basically Catholicism in one sentence, right? So that music is very much a projection of that. Catholic music generally does indeed project that. Have you heard about the Libertarian Project in the state of New Hampshire? Yes, it's been going on for like 15 years now, Free State Project. I don't think it's had much of an impact on New Hampshire. And some of the people who go to New Hampshire for this, I did a show on this. I did a segment of a show on this. Some really weird libertarians in New Hampshire doing weird stuff. I don't know. I've always wanted to live in the best place for me. I'd love to be surrounded by like-minded people, but to artificially have everybody move to somewhere like the cold of New Hampshire, I'm not willing to live with objectivists for cold, certainly not with libertarians. I went to Puerto Rico, where I'm the only one. And there's at least sunshine, and there's a beach. Those are requirements. All right, have you heard of advancements in stem cell generated skin? That's a stepping stone to real longevity. Yeah, I mean, I'm really interested in the whole stem cell stuff. I have had a couple of stem cell treatments. that have been very successful. One in my back and one in my knee, and both were very successful. And I'm a huge fan. I don't know why doctors are not using stem cells for back much more than they are now. There's a huge resistance. I think it's FDA driven. I think to really get good stem cell treatment on backs, you have to go either to Europe or to Mexico. The United States is way behind on this treatment. I somehow managed to convince my doctor to do it. He'd never done it before, and I don't think he's done it again. And I got him to do it, and it's worked brilliantly. But I like the doctor, and I heard it was really easy to do. So I got him to do the little surgery, clean it all up, and then inject stem cells, and it worked brilliantly. And you would save a lot of people the pain of back pain if they would embrace that more universally. Anyway, on the other hand, the scientific method probably says that you can't extrapolate from one observation, so I probably shouldn't say any of that. All right, back. Let's do another round. This time we're starting with Daniel. You're muted still.
There we go. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Hong Kong's fighting for its freedom. And while I don't think the military, the US military, has any reason to be there other than maybe they have to go in and rescue some Americans at some point, isn't there a lot we can do anyway, like ignoring the Chinese who are warning us to stay out of international waters in the area, offering assistance to rescue boats of people that are escaping, assuming they make it to international waters. Frankly, having an open immigration policy and say, hey, if you're coming from Hong Kong and you're not a violent felon, come on in. You know, no numbers. You just come on in. We let you in. And then mostly just say it's morally repugnant as often as possible. What the Chinese are doing. I mean, they're punishing people for expressing ideas peacefully, right? They're 7 years of jail for trying to get out after expressing those ideas.
It's stunning. Even the left in the U.S. that's supposed to be for free press and stuff, they're jailing journalists and stuff, and nobody says a word. Nobody says a word. So yeah, absolutely. I think everything you suggested I would start with opening up immigration. If you live in Hong Kong and you have a Hong Kong passport, and you're not a felon, you're free to come to the United States. And I would do that tomorrow. I would definitely say the 5th Fleet or the 7th Fleet, I can't remember which one is out there. They'll be scanning for boats of refugees who are trying to escape the Chinese authorities. And by the way, we'll take refugees from mainland China too, if you want to get out of there. But I would do more than that. I mean, I would shut down the U.S. Embassy in Beijing. I would bring all the diplomats home. I would tell the Chinese that they are an abomination. I would use the bully pulpit to condemn them at every opportunity possible. Yeah, I would say, look, here's my reasoning. I would say what the Chinese are doing in Hong Kong is proof that they are willing to be an aggressor. If they are willing to be an aggressor, they constitute a potential danger to the United States. We're not doing anything, but we are increasing the intensity of our patrols. We're increasing the number of ships that we're going to have in the South China Sea because we're worried about them stopping shipping lanes and trade and stuff like that. So yeah, there are lots of things we could do that would be viewed as very, very tough vis-a-vis China. And yet, what are we doing? We're imposing tariffs on Americans.
Yeah.
And even there, we're not doing it because of Hong Kong.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're doing it because our politicians don't believe in trade.
Right. I mean,
if you thought about American foreign policy, right, and if you had a tough foreign policy, and everybody knew you had a tough foreign policy, then they would behave differently to begin with. You wouldn't get into these situations.
Yeah.
You know, the big one's going to be Taiwan. We'll see what happens in Taiwan.
Yeah, that's what I'm really concerned is the Chinese are going to see their success in Hong Kong and go, nobody's going to stand up against us for Taiwan either.
Absolutely. And I think the thing to watch for is, I think China's in trouble. I think China's in trouble economically. And I think that there's going to be a lot of pressure on the Chinese Communist Party in the decade to come, because a lot of people will want to become richer, become more successful, and they'll be limited because economic growth. You know, if you think about now, they're talking about economic growth of 4 or 5%, used to be 10, 12, 14%. And it's probably not going to be, I think, 4 or 5%. I think it's going to be more like 2, 3%. At 2, 3%, a lot of people in the middle class and the lower middle class and in the lower classes are not going to be able to rise up. You get a lot less mobility when economic growth is slow. There's going to start being much more push against the government in the next 10 years. And if there is a domestic crisis, that's when you divert attention by going to Taiwan or something like that. So that would be the thing that I would look for. Another Tiananmen Square that motivates the Chinese to pivot to foreign policy and to rally the nationalist fervor because people are upset at the communist government. Yeah, I'm not optimistic about China because of the level of authoritarianism that they're exhibiting.
Yeah, it's getting worse.
Because I like China. Naveen. Oh, he's walked away. Just walked away. Yeah, he's coming back.
I'm here. Sorry. So, how do you distinguish between just optional choices, optional values, like, for example, the color of a choice of a color, your preference for a color or whatnot, versus something that's philosophically and morally significant or could be significant, like, you know, art maybe. Also, if you may comment on the requirement of knowledge, some knowledge to even make that kind of judgment, because I would think that your preference for music or art, previously I would have thought everything is just subjective, right? But now, today, I believe differently. So how would you determine that?
Big questions. I think the difference between optional values and non-optional values is whether they are required for your survival as a human being, whether they're required for you as a functioning cognitive human being. So if you wear a red shirt or blue shirt, I mean, you'd probably be a little bit happier if it was a color you liked, but it's not life or death. Nothing will really change in your life. Honesty is a life or death issue, right? Or a career is a life or death issue, or having a career. Art is a life or death issue. Liking art or not liking. They're life or death issues in the context of a cognitive being, if you care about your own cognition. So I think it really is, how important are they for the your very survival as a successful human being? If they're not crucial for that, then they're optional.
So how would you say that about art, that it is a life and death issue?
Now that's a big issue, right? And I'd recommend you read the Romantic Manifesto, because that's what the book is about, right? But basically, because we're a conscious being, and because these ideas are so abstract and so complex, without a concretization of those ideas, without those ideas concretized for us in a work of art, we cannot fully experience our life. We cannot fully experience what these abstractions mean to us. So you can live biologically without art, but spiritually you cannot. You cannot fully integrate the meaning of your life, of the things that you're doing, even of your achievements, without this mirror, in a sense, that reflects these values back to you, that concretizes these values back to you. So it's what Ayn Rand calls a psychological need, and even an epistemological need. I mean, Leonard Peikoff has this amazing lecture. I think I have it right here on my desktop. It's an amazing, amazing lecture, and it's called, I think it's called The Survival Benefit of Great but Immoral Art.
Value, I think. Yeah.
What's that?
It's survival value.
Yes, survival value. That's right. Thank you, Jerry. Yeah, survival value of great but immoral art. So art that projects immoral ideas.
The survival.
There it is. I opened it, so it started playing. Yeah, survival value of great but false art. Another way of saying it is art that projects bad values. So even art that projects bad values has survival value for you. But that you'd have to you'd have to listen to Lenin's lecture because it's hard. But it's Rand. I think it's Rand, or it's Lenin. But part of what you need to do as a human being is to shape your own soul, shape your own character, shape who you are in the deepest sense of that. And art is what helps you do that. And art helps you do that in different ways. So for example, Mr.
Sunshine.
What's that? Yeah, I mean, Mr. Sunshine, so Mr. Sunshine gives you a projection of heroism, gives you a projection of what it looks like to value and to fight for your values. Because that's what the movie's about. The movie's about conflicts of values, right? All these different value sets and the consequence of different choices around those values. And it gives you an instant emotional, but also intellectual understanding of, yes, values, that's what life is about. That's what it's projecting back. Love, that's what life is about. Love, that's important. And it reminds you of that and reinforces that in you. Without you even having to think about it, it's reinforcing that idea in you. And that's survival, because you need to love, you need to value. These things are indeed survival values, right? They are important. And this is telling you, yes, do it. You got to pursue these values, right? And it's concretizing that at the most fundamental level. Love is possible. Love is important. That's one of the themes of Mr. Sunshine. Don't give up on love no matter what.
So is that how you distinguish a bad art from good art, in the sense that you can put like really abstract value or bring it at a perceptual level if it's a good art, but it's a bad art, it's just not integrated, it's just mishmash?
Yeah, when a bad art, yes, the values are kind of there. Either the values are too explicit, right? They're hammering you on the head with the values, rather than presenting them aesthetically. But that's one aspect of it. The second aspect of it is, of course, how well is the art done? And that's a technical question, right? So what's the cinematography like in Mr. Sunshine? What's the acting like in Mr. Sunshine? How is the music integrated with the acting, integrated with the... Now, I think on all those scores, it's excellent, right? Think about the music track. Think about the slow motion scenes. Think about the meaning of a touch on a fabric, right? You remember when the gangster touches the hem of her dress, right? And everything slows down, everything freezes. And you get this romantic music coming in. And what that touch means to him, right? And then the revulsion on her face, that's what great art is. And that's why I think Mr. Sunshine's great art, because it's so integrated like that. It has all those things. And then you can have all that, and then the message could be evil, like in Dostoevsky or in Tolstoy, right? But the integration in itself is, in a sense, this is one of the points Leonard makes, and forgive me if I'm getting it wrong, but I think the point is the integration in and of itself is communicating something to you. It's communicating to you that integration is possible, that integration is important, right? Or when Tolstoy describes a room, and he has beautiful descriptions of room, he's a real naturalist, and he's focusing on certain things, right? And there's a certain sense in which, what is that telling you? What's that communicating? It's communicating, look, open your eyes. Don't just walk into a room and, dazed. Look, the world is rich. There's richness all around you. You know, and often they'll do it with nature, you know, go into a forest, smell the flowers or whatever. But go into a room and you look at the art, look at the frames, look at the way the light, the shadows fall on the wall, right? When I read great literature like that, I find that my perception changes for a few days. I wish it stayed changed forever, but because I start looking at things in ways I didn't look before, because, oh, you know, wow, okay, look, this is like that scene or whatever. So it changes you in an interesting you're not guiding it. It happens automatically. It happens if you take the art seriously. It happens subconsciously. If you're in the art, if you really embody yourself in it, and if you're on the premise of, I'm really immersed in it. So I find the same thing when I go to a museum and I look carefully at pieces of art. I then I start looking more carefully in my surroundings. Right? He talks about that. It conditions your subconscious to a particular attitude towards the world, and art does that. Nothing else really can do that. All right, now I've lost track of the order. Jerry jumped to the beginning. You're skipping? Okay. Zach, you're next.
Well, I just want to comment on what you said about great art. I find that when I read a really good book, that my inner monologue, my inner thinking will take on the characteristics of the writer.
Yep.
Which
thinking in better composed sentences.
Right. So let's see. So you mentioned, the likelihood of another dark ages is, I guess, lessened due to the pervasiveness of knowledge in our modern world. But I guess, and I think I believe that. But then I also can't help but notice that despite the fact that knowledge is so cheap and easy to discover, I mean, it's just a few clicks away, there are dozens of flat earth YouTube videos out there with millions of views, you know, and and in fact, it feels like, you know, people's fantasies and these communities are developing faster than our institutions can respond to them. So I don't know if that's good or bad.
No, it's horrible, because what you're seeing is kind of a breakdown in epistemology, because people can't think, so they're looking for conspiracy theories. They're looking for I'd say flat earthers are at the perceptual level, but even at perceptual level, the earth is not flat, because sailing ship, the mast, the Greeks understood this, right? Long time ago. Yeah, I mean, I can be pessimistic with the best of them, right? I mean, it's very depressing when you see how bad people are thinking, how much people take conspiracy theories seriously. But you have to remember, it's still a minority of people. You know, how many scientists do you think there are in the world? Several million? 99% of them, if you exclude religion as a conspiracy theory, 99% of them don't believe in crap like that. 99% are pretty solid, at least thinkers, when it comes to their science. Maybe not when it comes to their politics, maybe not when it comes to religion, maybe not when it comes to their home life, but with regard to their science. There are tens of millions of engineers out there. You know, we tend to focus on the nutcases. We tend to focus on people that disappoint us, and they are, right? I've had a lot of that in the last few years. People you thought were good thinkers or decent thinkers who were better than this, and then turn out to be enamored by conspiracies. But I still don't think that's the majority of people. And what I find is that, I don't know, people are scattered all over the place. They're good on some things and bad on other things. And what's rare is the integration. And so what I think happens, because they're not solid on anything, they don't really believe anything. What I think is going to tend to happen is I think the United States is going to become authoritarian. I think we're going to have a dictator in the US. And I think that at some point there'll be a rebellion against that, and we'll push against that. Other places in the world might not experience that. So I see things more constantly over the next 100 years in flux, back and forth, different places around the world, as hopefully the better ideas are gaining steam and ultimately.
And I guess the freedom of information, the freedom of information flow, the massive bandwidth of information feels like it enables that kind of a scenario.
It enables both, right? It enables the bad stuff because that resonates very quickly out there. But it also makes the good stuff possible. So, even though China is very authoritarian, I know plenty of Chinese people who are on Facebook, in spite of the fact that it's banned and there's a firewall. They use a VPN. It's not that hard. And they can get on Facebook and they can get on Google and they can watch the Yaron Brook Show, whatever. They can get YouTube. They can do all this stuff. And they can post. And many of them post on Facebook with their real names. And, so even the authoritarian regime in China doesn't really have control over its own people. And knowledge is still getting out there. Knowledge is still circulating. And among certain people, it's why I think there will be a civil war in China. I think there will be an uprising because I think you can't stop the knowledge of the rest of the world from them seeing it. Plus, they travel. In spite of the authoritarian nature of the regime, they haven't built a wall around China. They let their citizens leave. And Chinese travel. And at some point, they won't want to go back, or they won't want what they have back. So,
yeah, you mentioned integration is key, and I just want to comment on earlier on. You said that during your talks, people will disagree with. Well, they'll agree with you, but then they'll say "but."
Yeah.
And what they really should be saying is, I agree with you, but can't we keep everything exactly the way it is, right? Because that's the implication of that "but."
Yes. Or, yeah, it's a weird but, because often it's, I agree with you on everything you just said, Yaron, but I really disagree with everything you just said.
Right.
It's bizarre. It's just bizarre. It's, yeah, but I get it a lot because they respond to something, So for example, I'll say to socialists, I believe in individuals pursuing their own happiness and being free to do so and using their mind. And they'll say, yeah, I agree with all of that. Right? And in our communist utopian heaven, as Marx described it, that's exactly what happened. Yeah, but reality, it's, all right. Matthew.
Thank you.
Sure.
I guess I want to take the discussion toward economics here a little bit, and I guess what you're seeing as far as consumer spending, consumer behavior during this whole COVID impact on the economy with respect to substitutions. It seems to me, or appears to me, that people are still spending money. They might not be spending it at sports stadiums or restaurants or movie theaters, but they are definitely buying lumber and doing projects at home. So I guess I'd like to see, hear what you have seen.
Well, two interesting things. One is, yeah, people are spending. They're spending more than one would expect, given the economic contraction and given how many people have lost their jobs and given how many businesses are probably going to go under. And they're probably spending in different parts of the country differently. So I don't know what spending's like in New York City versus, let's say, Wisconsin. New York City, no use for lumber in Manhattan. So it's the spending behaviors would be interesting. But the other aspect of it is people are sitting on a lot of cash. People are, if you look at bank accounts are flush. More money in checking accounts right now than maybe ever in all of American history in terms of just the sheer amount of money sitting in checking accounts. So people are not taking risks. They're not opening businesses. They're not taking on debt as individuals, or they're taking on some debt, and they're spending, and they're holding on to cash at the same time. And they're taking on debt because debt is so cheap. I mean, why not, right? Why not go out and buy a house right now if the mortgage rates are 2 point something, right? You'll never see, I mean, I said that about 3. but you'll never see that again. So why not do it? And if fears of inflation are justified, then now's like the best time in all of human history to get a mortgage. Because if you get a mortgage at 2 point something and interest rates go to double digits, you've just made the best investment you've ever made, right? That happened to me in Israel. I got a mortgage and then we had hyperinflation and my mortgage was basically wiped out. It was basically was zero, right? So I'm surprised at how resilient the US economy is. It always amazes me. I would have thought we'd be in a lot worse shape than we are right now. I would have thought the economy would be contracting a lot more, spending would be down a lot more, bankruptcies would be up a lot more. I don't think we've seen the worst of the bankruptcies. I think we'll see that in the first 6 months of next year, but because they don't have to pay rent, so people are delaying a lot of the pain until next year. But I thought it would be a lot worse. And the US economy always, it did the same thing in 08, 09, is always more resilient than we expect it to be. And that's because we're still free in some essential way. We still can go out and, you know, in parts of the country, not in California, we can buy some lumber and fix up the house. In California, I have to get a county inspector to come and sign off on it. But I think in some places around the country, you don't have to. Or you just don't do it. Yeah, there's a certain level of freedom where people are still can do stuff out there, and Americans are confident and generally more optimistic. And yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's a mirage. Some economists would say it's a mirage because the government is printing so much money, so we're spending money we don't really have, and it is. But what the government has figured out, this is an interesting point. It figured this out probably around 1990. What the government's figured out is it can pretty much borrow and spend. So it can mitigate pain quickly. And the price it pays for mitigating that pain, it spreads over 30 years. They learned this during the S&L crisis. The S&L crisis happened in the 1980s. A lot of banks went under, a lot of S&Ls went under. It was a major crisis. And what the government did basically is it took out debt. It paid off, it bailed everybody out, right? So nobody felt the pain. And then it paid off the debt over 30 years. So because you're paying it off over 30 years, the impact it has on the economy is minute. If you aggregated the impact over 30 years, it's huge, but in every year it's small. And they keep doing that. They do that all the time now. So there's a crisis. They print up $1 gazillion, then they pay it off over time slowly. And in the meantime, the economy recovers because you flooded it with liquidity. So the damage that they are doing to the economy is immense, immense. But it's small in the short run. In the aggregate, it's massive. So what our politicians have learned is how not to have a Great Depression. And instead, they've replaced the Great Depression with stagnation, with slow economic growth forever. Now, one day that'll end too, but for now, what we've replaced, instead of big increases, big collapses, big increases, big collapses, now we've got this steady state where overall the economy grows a lot. We've now got this very steady state where there are no big changes, but there's no great economic growth either. Anyway, that's my interpretation.
All right, thank you.
The first time it came to me was in the 90s after the S&L crisis. It struck me how easily the government got out of the S&L crisis with very little damage to the US economy. And they seem to keep pulling this off every time. And the damage is, we're feeling it. We just don't know it because there's no parallel universe where the bailout didn't happen and everything returned to normal and things just went like this. Instead, we're going. All right. Thanks, Matthew. David.
Okay, Yaron, I'm in the trade show business. So our industry's just been completely destroyed since mid-March. But I liken it to really your speaking business. It's the same thing. You can't go anywhere. You can't earn any money speaking, things like that. So now my question for you is, now that the virus, whatever, what do you call the
vaccine?
Beg your pardon?
Vaccine?
The vaccines. Now the vaccines are coming out. I'm trying to plan my business. What do you think for 2021? Where into the first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, into the year, where do you think it's going to be as far as travel and people gathering in groups? In my world, trade shows, convention. In your world's big audience. And then second question is, when do you predict or think that it will be back the way it was, or will it ever be back the way it was?
Yeah. So I think next year, I mean, I don't have any special knowledge here, but I think the estimates are the same. May, June. It's going to take that long to get back to theaters, big groups, conventions, conferences, lectures. I think it's a good 6 months from now, unfortunately. They're just, the government's distributing a vaccine. What could go wrong? So I think if Amazon was doing it with Walmart and CVS, I think, we'd be vaccinated a couple of months and we'd be done with it, but that's not what's happening. In terms of return to normal, I mean, it's so hard to tell. Now, in some areas, I don't think we're going to return to normal. So I don't know that people are going to go into the office like they used to as much. We've discovered we don't really need to. And our bosses have discovered we don't really need to. So a lot of people are not going to go into the office again. Or they're going to go into the office once a week or twice a week. But the ability to do this on Zoom is changing how people are going to work in the future. I think in terms of face-to-face, I think there'll probably be some shrinkage, but it won't go away completely, because the fun of a trade show is not just the information and the communication. It's hanging out with people. It's seeing new things. It's being exposed to something new that you didn't know existed. It's walking around, which you cannot do, I think, digitally. So I think it returns, but in the beginning, it returns slower. It takes a while to pick up, and we might find that in all these live events, we just stabilize over a lower number in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. All right, who haven't we done round two? Jennifer.
Anyone mute me?
I can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you.
This relates to what Naveen said. When you're talking about values that are not universal, like whether you like dogs or not, for example.
Yep.
Did you say once that you should call those values personal values as opposed to subjective values?
Yes.
Can you say why?
Subjective implies that you have no reason. Subjective implies that it's just because, and that there's no rational reason for you to have it. Now, arguably, there might not be a reason why you like blue, right? I like blue. Right? Why do I like it? I think I have a reason, but it's personal, right? It has to do with loving the ocean and the sea and where I grew up and stuff like that, and that color blue of that deep blue of the Red Sea, the deep blue of the Red Sea. But it's not, I wouldn't say it's subjective. It's not just, there's a reason for it. And subjective is a philosophical term. So you don't want to be on the premise that I'm objective in some things and subjective in other things. No, I'm objective in anything. Some things are personal to me. Some things are universal. Some things are everybody should be able to see are objectively true. Does that make sense?
Yes. Thank you.
Sure. All right. Darius.
Sure. Just a comment. You've mentioned a number of times in the past that if the market is sufficiently free and innovative, that prices will actually go down over time. All else equal.
Yes.
Well, the American Enterprise Institute just updated a study they do periodically where they calculate how much the latest iPhone would have cost to produce in 1991, just 30 years ago, basically.
Yeah.
And they just updated the study on the iPhone 12, and it would have cost $50 million to manufacture at that time with a $500,000 camera thrown in for free. I just thought that was stunning.
Yep.
It really speaks to your point.
If you could even do it. Could you do it for 50 million?
Yeah, apparently you could. It would be very difficult. $50 million is difficult.
But you didn't have those chips. You didn't have ARM chips. You didn't have, I don't think you could even do it. I think that the extrapolating, if it was possible to do it, what would it have cost? But I don't think you could do it.
Yeah, I think they only go back that far just to have a time when they could do it with enough money.
Okay, I'd have to look at the details because I'm suspect. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Anything else, Darius?
No, that was it. Thank you.
No, that's yeah. I mean, that's an example of the kind of cost that go down, and we don't see it because quality goes up and the cost stays the same. So we're buying a computer every year for, let's say, for $3,000, but today a $3,000 computer can do what much more than a mainframe could do, 40 years ago, and the mainframe cost a lot more. Okay, let's see. Who have I missed? I've got Jonathan and Daniel. Did I skip you? Okay, we'll go back to Daniel. So Jonathan.
Hey, Yaron, I have.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks. I got a quick one for you. Talking a bit about some of your favorite movies and TV shows, etc. Were you ever a fan of The West Wing? I asked because, like you mentioned, another piece of I think television or movies. It's a show where the politics is certainly not my speed, but all of the characters are so passionate about ideas. They take ideas seriously. They're operating at the top of their respective games. They're heroic in their own little individual worlds. And in fact, there's a use of Yo-Yo Ma's cello. I think it's Bach in G major, that is so moving in it that it kind of just made me think, had you ever used, kind of watched the show and their very good use of classical music on a couple of occasions?
Yeah, I never did. It's one of those shows I never watched. So I've heard that it's really, really well made and it has all those characteristics that you just described, but I never actually watched it. But it does show.
All right, we'll put it on your list. I know you have a lot of other things as well.
That you don't have to agree with somebody's politics, with an artwork's politics, to enjoy the artwork, which I know a lot of people struggle with.
Awesome. Thank you again. Have a great weekend, a great Christmas.
Thanks. Daniel.
I don't see any issue more important than privatizing education. And while in some ways having a locked federal government, Republican, Democrat, they're all against privatizing education.
Yep.
Besides sending your own children to a private school that you choose, what kind of things can we do to advance the movement? And does it take going authoritarian and a revolution before we're going to see private education in the US?
I mean, who knows, but it probably is going to take a while because it's the most important thing. It's also the most difficult thing. I would say support education saving accounts. There are organizations that promote them. The specific structure of education saving accounts was promoted by the Goldwater Institute in Arizona. They do good work on it. I'm sure there are others who do good work on it. But that to me is the best way to privatize because it's in a sense a pain-free way to do it. It's because the government continues to fund education, but parents have a choice of how to deploy their dollars. So it's still redistribution of wealth, but at least it gets government out of education, out of the management, the decision making, the running of schools. And to me, it's fascinating. People say, "Oh, if we had private education, kids wouldn't be able to afford to go to school." And then I bring up education saving accounts. I said, "Okay, so I'll grant you that the government should pay for the school, but how about we do it through an education saving accounts with it?" And they still won't accept it, even though I've taken away their prime objection, because that's not really the objection, right?
They say it's not fair because then kids with the money can choose which schools that they want to go to.
Yeah, but everybody gets the money. That's the thing about education saving accounts. Now, it's true, rich parents can supplement more than poor parents, but they can today as well. So it doesn't put us in a worse case, and it makes it's obviously better without any of the cost that they attribute to it. What they ultimately say, if you push them, they're embarrassed about it, but what they ultimately say is, "I don't trust parents to make that decision." And that's the barrier. It's the Platonic philosopher king idea. It's poor people can't make decisions like that for themselves. I have to make that decision for them. That's what it boils down to. It's paternalism, and paternalism is very strong among the middle class and the wealthy, very strong. Poor people have no. I mean, I think poor people would embrace education saving accounts like this. It's the middle class that objects them. It's the educated middle class that objects them. It's
Poor people will send their kids to the wrong school. They won't make the good choice.
Or they won't send them at all, or they will. How will they choose? What will they know? Yeah, I mean, that's always what it boils down to, the real objections, because the financial stuff is bogus. You can get over that easily. I quote, and then I give them the story of the beautiful tree. I don't know if you read that. Yeah.
Yes.
But they can't get away from the paternalism. But. Yeah, but I agree. It is the number one issue. If we could privatize schools, everything else would fall into place. All right, I've got two quick super chat questions, or maybe not so quick. Morality has major epistemological consequences. Altruism have to be illogical in order to reach the desired conclusions. Yes, morality has epistemological consequences, and bad epistemology has ethical consequences. It all is a feedback mechanism, as all knowledge is to some extent. Would you be in favor of strict authoritarian approach by government if COVID was instead 100 times more deadly and much more contagious? No. I mean, if it was 100 times more deadly and much more contagious, then if we had the right guidelines and government educated us, or authorities told us this is what's going on, then we'd behave appropriately. Why do you need the government to tell you you can't leave your home? If there's a really contagious disease, you don't leave your home. And then if it's 100 times more contagious and 100 times more deadly, the essential services, it's okay to sacrifice those people. They don't get a choice because government has deemed them essential workers. No, the authoritarianism is never right. I mean, locally for an emergency with clear what the criteria of when it's over, sure. But it has to be very clear and it has to be very delimited time-wise. So you can shut down a neighborhood because there's a terrorist running around until the terrorist is caught. But you can't shut down the whole city. You certainly can't shut down the whole country. But I think all this stuff is, I can't remember who it was. If we had acted in January, none of this would have happened. If we'd acted in January, February, none of this would have happened. We still could not test in March. The tests were failing in March. If we'd acted and developed tests and tested, traced, isolated January, February, none of this would have happened. And that is true of a very deadly disease as well. It's the same principle. You got to test, trace, isolate. Isolate becomes more important if the disease is super deadly. If you do that, you can overcome. And if you don't, you won't. All right, everybody. Thank you. Thanks to our panel of contributors. Really appreciate your support. making the show possible. Thank you for all of you who joined us and who contributed via Super Chat, asked questions, and don't forget to like the show before you leave. Don't forget to subscribe, and you can support the show on YaronBrookShow.com/support, Patreon, Subscribestar, and Locals. All right, everybody. I'll see you, don't know, either tomorrow or Tuesday. I'll figure it out. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great show, Yaron. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure.